This is Gilbert Andrew Garcia. Listen to my radio show, A Tip from Gilbert. Talk, inspiration, and prayer every Monday from 11 a.m. till noon on Houston's gospel leader, KWWJ. 1360 AM and streaming live on kwwj.org. Listen on the legendary KYOK 1140 AM and streaming live on kyokradio.org. KCOH 1230 AM, The Source. On San Geek Radio 95.1 FM 1460 AM. And Aliento Radio 101.7 FM and 1540 AM. Call in at 832-570-8075 and follow me on social media. See you then. All right, Houston, you got me. This is Gilbert Andrew Garcia of A Tip from Gilbert. Talk, inspiration, and prayer. We're here with another episode. Producer, I don't even know how many episodes we have. You may want to limit. You may want to raise my head a little bit because it looks like my head's getting cut off there or something. But I think, or maybe it's just my long hair that I just am trying to cover up. Did I do hair and makeup today? Oh, I don't know. But coming back for a second, boy, every time you open the newspaper, there's just something new all the time. And I don't know what's going on with this housing authority. If somebody knows, please call me and let me know. I just don't know what's happening there. And holy cow, I don't know what's happening with this TEA takeover our schools. But my goodness, you know, you can take a look at the schools. If they're doing all right, my view is let them go. Let them keep going. Why take them over? And at the end of the day, you know, I did a research and I saw from the Kinder Institute, and I'm going to just paraphrase numbers here, that the national average of money spent per pupil is about a little over $12,000. In Texas, it's a little over $10,000. In Houston, it's a little over $9,000. So one thing's for sure, money may not be the solution to everything, but you can't have a solution and implement programs without money. And so it seems to me that we need all kinds of resources, especially if we want to get our children to get the education we want them to have. And then again, I just saw that Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee may be throwing her hat in the ring for mayor. I don't know if that's true or not true. I was just reading something from the Chronicle. But at the end of the day, listen, you know, I haven't talked much about it yet, and I won't yet. But at the end of the day, the more candidates, the better. Especially good candidates. That's the whole point of democracy. And let the candidates, thank you, studio audience, and let the candidates talk about the issues so the people can know exactly what they stand for and what they're voting for. And like my mama always said, if you don't vote, don't complain. So vote, vote, vote. On that note, I have a special guest because I've been friends with her a long time, and people just know her as Dr. Nissi, but really she's Dr. Nissi Hamilton. So Dr. Nissi, can I just say Nissi?
Yeah, you can say Nissi. Can I say Nissi? Yes.
Because, you know, there's some people like Cher, they just know her as one name. You know, there's Madonna, you know, they're just one name, and that's you. Yes. Because everybody knows you. And so, you know, you've been everywhere.
Yes, I have.
You've been everywhere.
Because of you.
Well, there you go. And you know what? And I'm going to keep going with you.
I love you.
No, you've been everywhere. Look, you have an incredible story.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
And we might both cry.
Yeah.
But yet they'll be happy tears.
Yeah.
Because of I don't know the right word here, when you have this incredible phoenix.
Yes.
And you go through these difficult times and the deepest valleys, and then you're now on the tallest mountain.
Yes.
And now you're saving souls.
Absolutely.
You really are.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about that. But then I also remember, didn't you run for office?
I did.
I want to talk about that too. So there's so much to talk about. But let's go back to you for a second, because you have been one of the leading voices to assist people and educate people and sensitize people on what's really going on with human trafficking.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Oh man. So right now, since you all have just picked me up and turned me into this phoenix of sorts. So thank you. I mean, because I was poor. I was trying to figure out, how do I market myself? How do I talk to individuals who are not leaning in human trafficking and really divesting like how human trafficking is affecting communities, period, not just one community, but communities of color. And so it was very interesting because when I did run for office, it became very clear and evident that we had not touched on the subject of human trafficking as a people, as Black people, as community, whether it was Democratic or Republican. It was a huge deal. And your team saw me and say, you know what? Let's do this.
Let's do this.
Let's do this. And Gilbert, you have been so instrumental because I remember when Tony was running for office and you told Tony, hey, you need to talk to this girl. And then Tony has a great idea and he goes, let's write a 5-point plan. Let's talk about how are we going to address human trafficking. And Gilbert, had you not set me up in that direction, I mean, you were such a father to me. You said, look, we're not just going to have you everywhere. We're going to have you in the position of who you are. And this is towards the end of the race. A lot of times we see people drop people off while they're running for office and we go, hey, they weren't useful. Right. You had no efficacy in this race. We really couldn't tell what direction you were going in. You just wanted to put your name in a hat and you didn't treat it that way. And this is the one time we see somebody who's a millionaire who says, you know what, hey, we want to invest in you in another type of way to where you have provisional resources, where you are a voice to people who don't have this conversation.
You know what? I am just feeling the energy. That's the thing about you. It's just infectious. Now, just let's educate our listeners for a second. Yeah. How bad is human trafficking? I mean, what do the stats say? And how does Houston compare to other cities in America?
Oh man, so right now Houston is number 1 for human trafficking.
That's what people say.
Yeah, and so you know what? And I put that stat out a long time ago, right? Maybe about 4 years ago. When you include, so Harris County and Houston are two, they write contrasts with each other. Right. So the numbers may be a little flawed, but you got to think we're the 4th largest city, and then we have the largest county in the world. And it's like, oh man, there's going to be some type of debauchery going on when it comes down to, from our children to adolescents, all the way up into adulthood and things like that. And when you kind of put the numbers together and you start looking at it, it's like, oh, okay, here's where we're leaning towards. And here's why we're leaning towards that. We have a open red light district. We just talk about Bissonnette, but Bissonnette isn't the only one.
No kidding.
Right. You got Cullen. Oh my God.
Cullen. See, I haven't been, I need to, just from a knowledge standpoint, I just need to tour it. I like to tour things. When people told me Washington Avenue is so bad, I went at 12:30 a.m. and walked up and down for 2 hours with my wife and some other couples. And you know what? Everything I heard was true. Yes. And so, would you give me a tour sometime?
Absolutely. Like we do a tour at Crime Stoppers Houston. I do a tour. I host that tour with several different companies who are into corporate social responsibility around.
I would like to do that.
Man, Gilbert, you would love it. I tell my story and we go over just the litany test of what human trafficking looks like in the city of Houston. Because right now there are over 35,000 Texas children who go to school next to an illicit massage parlor.
No kidding.
Yes.
That's horrible.
That is horrible.
That's horrible because what sort of signal does that send to them? I mean, don't they walk
that we
by?
Don't care.
That we don't. They walk by and they see massage. It's like, now there are legitimate masseuse.
There are.
And then there's, not legitimate, I guess I'll just say.
Yeah.
How can you tell? Do the police know?
The police do know. And then, we have so many just contradictory channels within our own city of Houston that allows this type of thing. It's a dictatorship, and then it's not a dictatorship because here's why: we have pay to play in Houston, and so as long as you pay, you can play. Who wouldn't want to move a business that is of a mob type business that has sexual, connotation to it, and nobody's going to care that this is moving into your neighborhood, right? Because we have the zoning laws, but our zoning laws really don't protect communities from this type of thing growing into their neighborhood. The only time you get into zoning is how far a liquor store can be from a school or the strip club, 1,000 feet. Go to some of these businesses and see if that 1,000 feet rule is still in place.
Right.
There.
What's funny about what you said, zoning, is I'm always trying to learn. And I will talk to people like people on Washington Avenue that sort of introduced me to it, how the noise ordinance and everything, and they're there complaining about all this stuff. And then I say to them, well, is it because of zoning? They say, well, we don't want zoning though. I'm like, well, if you don't want zoning, this is what happens.
Right.
Because 1 to 2 blocks from their homes and their neighborhood are all these bars with all the fighting and all the trash and all the,
And this is why people, more or less our conservative people, move into areas where there are HOAs to prevent that type of stuff from moving to the neighborhood and prevent kids from seeing that.
Yeah. What that means is we have a caller already. Is there a Dominic already? Dominic.
Hello, Gail. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Dominic. What do you got? What do you know about?
There's no background music. I'm in a restaurant right now.
Okay, well, I hope the food is good. Talk to us, Dominic. What do you got for me, Gilbert Garcia? A tip from Gilbert, or for Dr. Hamilton?
My concern. I'm going to say something here, and I think this is going to dovetail into your guest. Recently we had rodeo. Now we got the Final Four.
Yeah.
And, in my spiritual journey, I have spread out into the Byzantine parts of the Catholic communion. And there was this gentleman at the beginning of the Byzantine period called John Chrysostom. He wrote this homily, and it's a long homily. But basically, he's talking about, why are we building stadia? Why are we building all these fancy things where we have poor on the street? Now, I don't think he was meaning just handing people a check. I think he wanted, the church and the government to treat each individual person as he or she is, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. For instance, something like Stephen Hawking would never have been able to hold a job with his ALS. He gave us wonderful science. Look what Dr. Frieden is doing with the ADA and the Metro Board. But my thing is, for all the money that's being spent on rodeo this past month and for Final Four, we could just take a little mustard seed of that and upgrade those who have less in a productive way, not a welfare thing, but in a very productive way. And that might, with your lady guest on the air today, that might be an incentive for women to do things right. They have a good chance to get a good job where they don't have to sell their bodies. With that, I'm going to send it back to you.
Dominic, we thank you for that. I want to talk about this concept of Final Four and these big events that draw lots of people and draw lots of big bucks. And is that where the sex trafficking kind of goes around? But hold that thought. I want to make sure your camera is that camera there.
Oh.
Yeah. So if that's your camera, that's my camera. So when you look at that camera, you're looking to Houston. So going back to what Dominic said, is there a big rise in sex trafficking and sex business, if that's the right phrase, during Final Fours and all of those things?
So we absolutely.
Super Bowls,
absolutely.
I don't want to pick, I'm not saying Final Four, but you know what I mean. Big sporting events when there's lots of people from out of town with lots of attention and lots of money, lots of wealth come in.
Well, yeah, back in the day, we used to do like this cow call. Right. This is where you get into the cowgirl, right? This is where this mentality comes from, where you are basically somebody who is put on front stage for those type of athletes, for those type of prestigious parties. You were the girls that were put on reserve. You were, in the background, but you had the hair, you had the makeup, you looked the part. And you would go out, you would be a part of this agency that would go out and recruit you. And whenever something like, the big win would happen, whether there's a win or a loss, and you get to be around the ball players, then they'll do that cow call, and you will go out there and do your thing and make your money. There will either be a set price by it could be a maitre d' or a madame. Sometimes they'll say maitre d', because that's more of a hospitality term that people are less offended by, right? Mm-hmm. But you say madame, then you automatically know, hey, this person is, sex trafficking women.
Well, let me ask you this. So when you grew up in the foster care system?
I did.
Tell us about that.
I did.
I mean, what's it? I mean, for someone like me, I mean, I had a hardworking family. It was a traditional middle class Latino family. My parents worked hard. They got out of poverty. Those sorts of things. So I'm a little ignorant about it all, if you don't mind me saying. So the foster care system. Do you choose the family? Do they put you in a family, and do you go from family to family? And is it meant to be this is a temporary holding pattern until you're adopted? Or just explain to our listeners how it works.
Well, I mean, I like the way you said that, a temporary holding pattern.
Yeah.
It is a temporary holding pattern until somebody either has room for you or has room for your particular case. So they have different levels when you go into foster care for the type of need of the child. In my case, I went in as a victim child. So I was raped and went into foster care, and I wasn't allowed to go back home to my family. And I ended up living in a shelter here in Houston, one of the most notorious shelters for human trafficking, which is the CRC, Chimney Rock Center. And I lived there for a very long time. And I think during this time, there was the earliest storm. I can't think. I think it started with an I or something like that. It was like a lot of water, and we had to move and stuff like that. But I remember there being a storm around that time, and I was in that shelter for so long that it took me quite a bit of time to actually get into someone to foster me. And I was there with my foster mom and things like that, and things started going really well. But as long as you have things like sexual assault, issues of drugs, or any type of violence, you come from any type of violence, there's a level that you have going in, and that foster care parent gets a certain amount of money for you.
Wow. We have lots of questions. Stay there.
Yeah.
When she lifts it up, you don't need to look that way. That's their way to show me who's calling. So what was the first caller there? Alejandro. Alejandro, are you there?
One moment. Yeah, he's there.
Alejandro, are you there?
He's there.
Mr. Alejandro.
Hello, this is Alejandro.
Alejandro, you got me, Gilbert Garcia, tip from Gilbert, Talk Inspiration and Prayer, with Dr. Hamilton, who's already shared extraordinary personal things. And I think she does it for the benefit of all, to learn and to grow and to stop this issue, this social ill. What do you got for us, Alejandro?
Sure. So I was hearing. Well, first of all, good morning, Gilbert. Good morning, Dr. Hamilton. It's a pleasure to talk to you both. While I was listening earlier to the call, I was reminded something that Don mentioned. He mentioned how the Houston Rodeo and all these events could be it can act as a catalyst to kind of increase these kinds of issues. And I was reminded of this incident that happened while I was volunteering at the rodeo. There was this young lady who was standing next to this guy walking out, I believe, of the rodeo, but she was making some certain hand signals that was apparently meant to notify others that she was in an abusive situation, or maybe even currently being trafficked. And I was curious, is there anything? And eventually, the woman was rescued. By the way, she was taken by the authorities and questioned, and the man was dealt with accordingly. But is there something that we can do is there anything that we should be keeping an eye out, I should say, to help these women who are in these situations? Anything that as a everyday citizen could do to help out, essentially?
What a great question. In other words, what can the average person do to help?
At a sporting event, especially, always notify the police. You want them to investigate, because if you turn into the investigator, then you'll end up putting yourself in a serious situation where, hey, you're accusing somebody of something, and now you open yourself up to a lawsuit because, you're pushing an agenda. Right. But if you see something, always say something. Like right now. So the last legislative session, I passed 3 laws. But
Great.
One. Yeah. And so thank
Just
you. Right.
you.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yes. So but one of the laws, because Greg Abbott signed 9 of them into effect, one of the laws that got passed with my law was the no trafficking zone. And that was held by some of my own survivor sisters, as well as another person in the space, Jacqueline Aludo, she really, was hands-on about the no trafficking zone and what it would mean for the, protection of outing events. And no different than how we have cell phone zones around schools. No different than we have, hey, no guns, safety, that
Right.
type of control. We wanted the same thing for survivors of human trafficking. So what happens is the penalty of the trafficking happening at sporting events goes up.
Well, that's probably the best deterrent of all,
Right.
right? To make it really hard. But how do you make sure you get, yes, you want to get, I don't know the right word, the users, but how do you get the traffickers? Is that the right phrase?
Right. So what we did,
the end user, I understand, but how do you get to the source?
So, and when before they become traffickers, typically they're groomers, right? Because they haven't passed the litany test of having a network. Because once you're a trafficker, you have a network. There's a supply of girls that you are supplying to your friends, your family, your own pedigree of people who like to be exposed to this type of debauchery, but in a a more classy way. So they're doing the wrong thing the right way. And so what we did was we made it to where not only do you go to jail or get the felony for selling your body, the buyers get the same type of injury, the same type of penalty. They receive the same type of criminality of if you are purchasing.
See, that's the way to also end it.
Right. Right. And so shout out to Commissioner Tom Ramsey. He really supported me by getting more signs in our red light district area that stated, hey, if you are doing this, whether you're buying or selling, this is a state jail felony. Here are the consequences. Don't do it. Not only that, he put more cameras in those areas so that we could kind of see who's prostituted, but also who's buying before they get into the networking side of it. So if we see these people that are doing it in those particular areas, going to these sporting and outing events, we can kind of connect the dots and say who's doing what and have we seen this person before. So
good for him.
Yeah.
I mean, I've known him a long time. And of course, everybody knows I'm a Democrat. Of course, everybody knows he's a Republican. But it doesn't matter. He's a good guy.
He's a good guy.
And he's always trying to do the right thing, just period. Well, Alejandro, seems to me one of the first things is, if you see something, say something. Right. And the other thing is just the mere fact that you're saying and asking the question, what can we do to help, already means you've crossed the line of you recognize the problem and you're trying to figure out how can I help stop it. That already, I think, is a big victory. So we appreciate you, Alejandro. I hope you call in again, my friend.
Will do. You have a great morning, and thank you so much for your answer.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling in. You go back for a second. So how long were you in the foster care system? Is that the right word, foster care system?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So I was in every bit of 6 years.
6 years?
Yeah.
How many families were you with in that time period?
In that time period, so I had one foster mom, but I moved to several different agencies. So maybe about 4 different agencies.
And when you're at an agency, again, I may be saying things that are insensitive and I don't mean it because I don't know what I'm talking about. Are you in a family's home or are you in a big sort of apartment with others that are in the system and you're in this whole living community area?
With the second one, what you just said, it's not an apartment, but it's more of a house. And there are other girls that are there dealing with some of the same issues. And then, you have your monitors and stuff. And it's almost like living in a group home. I mean,
right?
It's a group home. Yeah, it is a group home. And
are they just only young girls and then boys are somewhere else?
As long as I've dealt with CPS, I have never seen or heard of a home for the boys. I really don't know what happens to the boys.
There's got to be.
Yeah, I know that there has to be.
Because boys are prostituted, boys are abused, all of those things.
Yeah, and then since I've been talking more about human trafficking and people that have been trafficked because I'm more of a voice of reason for them, people are like, you know what? This is what happened to me, and now I'm ready to talk about it. They're not afraid. They, the shame is released. I'm seeing more boys come out and talk about it and say, "Hey, no, this is what happened to me, and I'm here for it."
You hear about actors and things like this that come out and talk about, or athletes that talk about something that happened to them. I think the more that you come out and talk about it, the more society will benefit. It may be difficult for you, but maybe in some way, as the Lord says, the truth will set you free.
Come on.
Maybe it'll help you therapeutically, but at the end of the day, it certainly helps society to let people know that they're not alone out there. Well, let me ask you this. So, again, these are hard questions because I don't know what I'm saying, and these are hard things to talk about. But yet we got to talk about them.
We do.
So when you're there in a home, are you there like, every night hoping, Lord, I hope somebody will adopt me?
Absolutely.
And do you ever say like, what's wrong with me, Lord? How come nobody loves me? Tell me about that.
It is the most confusing transition you will have in your entire life, because you got to understand something. You got people that come there with different religious beliefs before they came into foster care, right? But then you have the person who actually owns the home have their own religious beliefs, right? Whether they believe in God or Buddha or, Muhammad or, what God that they serve. And they got all of these systems that have these moral constructs that govern how they do things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if you don't believe in their God and how they do things, but you got your own way of doing things, it's hard to connect with somebody on that. So it'd be different if our CPS system was so sophisticated that it was like, you know what, we're going to have a Christian home for the Christian children. We're going to have a Buddhist home for the Buddhist children.
Well, what a great idea though, right?
Fantastic.
It makes everybody get along better.
Exactly.
And there's no suspicion and there's no prejudices.
Right. And then you can develop that moral code. People don't realize everything we do in America is governed by a code. If you get in trouble, it's the penal code. If it's the education, it's the education code. If you're a juvenile and you get in trouble, it's the juvenile code.
Very interesting.
If it's a divorce, it's the family code. And so here it is. We have lost. We're competing with ourselves over a moral code that we're not even teaching our kids. Meaning, we're telling our kids to pray to a God that they don't even see us pray to. Well, which God? We're telling them to listen to the 10 commandments. Well, now it's a lot of gods have commandments. So which God are we talking to?
Right.
Which God are we talking about? We just put prayer back into the school. Before, when you and I were going to school, you used to pray on the morning announcements before you said the Pledge of Allegiance.
That's right.
And we gave honor to God and we gave honor to our country. We're not even teaching kids to give honor to God first and then to the country.
Right now,
I have a problem with that.
Right now, I think, I don't know. It just seems to me at school, we're just trying to get them up and get them out.
Exactly.
I just.
And pass tests.
And pass tests. Well, hold that thought because we already have more callers. Was there a Jason on there? Jason, are you on there?
Yes, I'm here.
Jason, you got me, Gilbert Garcia, a tip from Gilbert, Talk Inspiration and Prayer with Dr. Hamilton. What do you have for us today? We're talking about human trafficking.
Yes, first I want to appreciate Dr. Hamilton for sharing her story with us and all the things that she's done in the community since coming back here. But one thing, I was looking at her bio, and one thing that stuck out to me is one thing that she said that changed her life was joining the Navy. And when I think about the military, I think of stability and I think of structure. And when she also talks about growing up in a foster care, I can feel that sometimes there's not too much structure from moving from home to home. And sometimes even if you have a full family, you don't have too much structure for a kid growing up, 13, 14, 15. So my question is, what can the city do or even the government to build some sort of structure, whether it's get with the Navy or the Army and form some sort of ROTC program within these type of foster systems, or even some technical colleges to come in and teach them some skills. So once they do leave these foster homes, they're able to have some skills moving into it and get jobs and get on their feet as quick as possible. Because I think that lag in between leaving and getting on your feet is very difficult, and you can go one way or the other. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's the other way. So can you just give us a little insight into that? And I'll hang up and listen. Thank you.
What a great question. Oh my God.
Brought me to tears.
That's there were so many parts to that question. First of all, the Navy, was that a way out for you?
That was a way out for me. I went and enlisted into the military without my trafficker knowing about it.
Wow.
And we actually ended up having a fight. So I was a bottom B, and I had already transitioned. So the house had different floors in it, and so you had women living on the upper floors, and I ended up living on the bottom floor. And I was transitioning out of position of being a bottom B to just being a lesser than. I'm like a minion. I do whatever they tell me to do, but previously that was not my position. So now there's a new girl in that particular position, and there is like a battle of authority now, who got to do what type of thing. And so she actually knew about me getting this contract and get ready to leave, and it became a disloyal thing. You don't betray your pimp. And because that was such an issue, we ended up having a fight, and HPD came out, and we were supposed to be arrested. And here it is, the one time, the officer knows what's going on. Trafficking was not the subject back then.
Nobody talked about it.
Nobody talked about it. It was there was like a mutual understanding of, between the pimps and police type of deal. You know what I mean? Because we had not had laws to kind of regulate that type of foot traffic and that type of sexual debauchery amongst people. Is there a buy sell quota? Because at the time the police officer came, I wasn't prostituting.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time that the laws were in effect, it did not adjudicate anybody from that type of crime. Like, it was like, we know there's crime. We didn't see this happening here. We understand that this is the system of it, but how do we deal with it? So the only arrest that could have been made was, you got two of your top notch, cowgirls, I'm gonna say that word,
right,
fighting with each other, and you don't got your women under control type of deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember talking to the officer, and I remember begging him and saying, hey, please don't arrest me. I am leaving to the military. This is the one opportunity that I have to get away from.
Oh my God. Can you imagine if you were arrested? You
right.
would have never gotten out. And you would never gotten in the Navy. Boy, that was an angel.
He was an angel, and HPD recently allowed me to tell that story, and they put it out there. So I thank you, HPD. Shout out to my Houston Police Department for allowing me to tell that story.
Yeah.
And for the police officers to stand behind me, even to this day and stuff. I mean, because that could have been, it would have been a valid arrest. I get it. But that officer saved my life. So, CRT is necessary, dealing with people, dealing with how to, figure out if this is something that I need to turn this person to offender for or not. I mean, that's a huge deal. Mm-hmm. Because what we see today is we see a lot of women being arrested for prostitution, right? Which I don't have a problem with women being arrested for prostitution. What I have a problem with is how TCIC and NCIC codifies it. When you're arrested for prostitution, it is codified as a crime of moral turpitude, meaning it's the equivalent of petty theft, robbery, stealing. And so when girls or women or men come out of jail for being arrested for prostitution, well, they can't go work for Walmart or Ross because it's
on their record.
But it's on their record as they were stealing money, they were robbing, they were
very interesting.
Right. So it's codified moral turpitude. So while you're saying prostitution, they can't go work at
how can we make some sort of diversionary program where if you are a first time offender, you're arrested. I'm making this up. I can't think of another way. If you stay clean for a year, then it's off your record entirely. I mean, some sort of diversion program, a second chance program.
Absolutely.
I mean, it just seems to me that that's really the way to go. And to really educate these young women and men.
Absolutely.
That there's another way.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you got Kathy Griffin, who has her what we call a whole class, helping others excel, and it's amazing. And I love what she's doing right now. She's currently the only prostitute working in law enforcement right now.
No kidding.
Right. She's the only she's the only person who's been known on record to be a prostitute working in law enforcement. Now, what do you think would happen if we had the younger generation of girls who have been known as prostitutes working in law enforcement? What kind of precedence would that set? What kind of tone would that give? What kind of hope would that give to our girls?
Well, I want to go back to, so the military was your way out. It's funny how the military, that was the way for my grandfather out of poverty. He joined the Marine Corps.
Wow.
I mean, it's that, yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, and going back to the question that we had there, I think his name was Jason.
Yeah.
Is, what other things can we do, or what, I think the Marine Corps, the Navy, and all those are great things. What other ways out are there?
So, speaking of other ways out, what the schools at HISD have is college, career, military readiness, right? Wouldn't it be awesome if we could start preparing our students not just for college in the 9th grade, but also prepare them for the military? We got to stop waiting till they get into the 11th and 12th grade and start pressuring them about the military. We have to embed those ideas in them at a very early age. I mean, I'm even willing to going from 8th grade going into the 9th grade, having them, understanding what this means, what it means to go and serve your country, what it means to get out of this guerrilla warfare mentality, or that you're going to be a product of your environment. Take that same skill. You like to fight, okay, take that same skill, because we fight in the Navy. Okay. We fight. We some real gangsters. Just go be gangster for your country.
That's exactly right.
You want to use a gun? Cool. Get you some control have discipline about the gun. Go in the military. We could treat, never keep. Treat every weapon as if it was loaded. Keep your weapon on safety. Have discipline about yourself and what you're arming yourself with. They're just arming themselves with all of these tools, and they don't have the discipline or the mentality to manage the stuff that they got, and they're getting it too early.
Boy, you're saying, you're preaching. You know what? No, really, you got some of that in you. But and rightfully so, because you're passionate about this.
Very passionate.
This is your life.
This is my life.
And you, I don't know the right word, made it or turned around or I don't know the right word, got out. And now you're trying to spread the gospel. Hold that thought. We have another caller. Is there a Jay Flores on?
Yes, sir. How are you?
Jay, you got me, Gilbert Garcia, here with Dr. Hamilton, talking a little bit about sex trafficking. What do you got for us?
Dr. Hamilton, I appreciate what you're bringing into the table. Very, very kind of you to allow us to walk into your world and have the listeners to, maybe going into a similar situation that you went through, and allowing them to realize that there's different paths right after the storm. And, that's the thing. I believe that when it comes to sex trafficking and many other experiences very similar to that, the trauma that a person can go through and how society treats them afterwards, it's a very difficult thing to actually, confront it and then move on and have a decent life. Because a lot of things that happen to us, either we're just put in a certain situation, we're too young to understand, or we just happen to go through a situation where we had no control and it happened to us. And now we're in a situation where we want to move on, we want to be successful and good to society. There's a lot of barriers that is put in front of us that we have to overcome. And I believe that a lot of programs there should be out there, or there should be more programs where you actually let people know that not only what you went through we understand, and that you're trying to get out. Like somebody was incarcerated for a certain amount of time, and then they come out to society. People tend to look at them differently, and in the eyes of God, we are brothers and sisters that we should look out for one another. And it's very shameful how society doesn't, as a group, as a mass, it's very hard for us to overcome somebody's wrongdoing. And I just think that it's very important, and especially what you were saying earlier about people, having suicide issues and having all these different ways. And a lot of people don't understand that once you come to out of the trauma, a lot of people don't understand that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You know, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that have been successful businesses. It's not the end of the world. If we just got to be strong minded and try to overcome and have God always together with you, holding your hand through this whole situation that a lot of people going through, and always put your situation in front of God, and then just pray, and be a believer, and that's just what I'm saying in my perspective. I wanted to say thank you, and thank you to you too, Mr. Garcia, for allowing such wonderful people to come to your show, and having this point of view and this perspective. Thank you so much.
Well, Jay, I'm hugging you on cyberspace right now. You don't see me, but I'm hugging you right now because those were beautiful, beautiful words, and we take them. We take them and we accept them, and we appreciate you, and thank you for calling in. Thank you for listening. And I think one of your things of sort of thanking Dr. Hamilton for sharing her stories, I think that's probably one of the best things that's been said, because it takes courage, because you don't know how people are going to react. But when you're as bold as she is, you're in that zone of, I already know the right thing. I need to educate people. I need to help people. And you're going to accept me for who I am or not.
Right.
Well, that's the thing. I think she went above and beyond, because this is the thing. I believe in the eyes of God, right? We're not in the eyes of a man. In the eyes of God, the vision of everybody's life and the outcome of what they have become, it's a whole different perspective. God sees us as equal, and if you're willing to forgive yourself and ask God for forgiveness and then start it over, there's a lot of things that could go way beyond your life. It could be so successful, could be so happy, you could accomplish so much. And once us as humans hold to that thought and through that experience, and through that trauma, and we don't let go, we don't ask, we're not involved with God and Christianity, and then things are a lot harder for you to start living again. And I think that what she's doing, Dr. Hamilton is doing, it's way beyond courage. I think she's just, God has a mission for her, and it's a very solid
Amen.
mission. And what she's doing, I think it's so courageous, and I want to applaud you for that. And I think God is smiling, looking at you, of what you're doing for the community. And thank you so much once again.
Thank you for calling in. What a beautiful thing.
Awesome.
Thank you for calling. Please call into the show again. I love that. God has a mission for you.
Yeah, he definitely has his hand on it, for sure.
I think he's right.
So some of the things I would like to address, like two things: the trauma part of it, and then what I am doing. Gilbert, because of just your inspiration in my life and being such a father figure to me, I currently run the largest urban prevention plan against human trafficking. So I do human trafficking prevention, and I go to the different schools who have issues with getting their kids across that finish line, getting their kids across, getting that high school diploma. And a lot of deficit is with our kids. Either they drop out because they have babies, job insecurity, food insecurity, things like that. Or what I personally deal with is the children of the pimps, the children of the prostitutes, the children of the sex trafficking victims who actually go to jail. And then the kids are put in the position of having to maintain the economy of the household while the parent is out doing their time for their criminal activity. And so the NGs is a no grade. And when these kids get no grades, they think, you know what, I'm already so far behind, I'm not going to finish. And so then
they fall into the lifestyle.
They fall into the lifestyle. And this is why I am big on prevention, because what I can do as an individual is come into the school with my program, Nissi's Network Incorporated, and that program is called Pumped Up Kicks. I come into the school and we find those kids who have NGs and who has been affected by the justice system, meaning they've personally been infected because they dealt with juvenile justice issues, or they've had a family member who's been infected by the justice system themselves. And I partner with Grow with Google. And so Google has given me Google career certifications.
Wow.
And with those Google career certifications, because it's TEA approved, and it increases their college career military readiness, and it also gives over 40% of accountability for the school, I can erase those NGs off those kids' report cards and increase their GPA, because they'll go through the program, which takes about 3 to 6 months, and depends on how much time the school is allowing them to go through the program. They go through that program, we can erase those NGs, and they got up to 5 courses. They could do it in data analytics, they could do it in project management, they could do it in user experience. I mean, the list goes on. These 5 different courses, and without going to college, they can still get jobs into IT.
Yeah.
So instead of flipping burgers at McDonald's, they can work in the IT department at McDonald's. They don't have to take the risk of going into debt with going into college if they don't want to. But they can do exactly what it is they want to do by selling their bodies, which means they can make progressive income. Every kid wants progressive income. They want to make $70,000 right away without having to go through the rigmarole of, post-secondary education.
Well, how many kids have gone through your program?
Right now, I got 223.
Come on, you do not. Wow.
Now, wait, these certifications they're over $30,000 a piece. So this is $6.6 million that I have single-handedly put back into my community.
Don't you feel great?
It feels amazing. I do.
I feel amazed. I don't want to feel amazed. I feel amazing being with you that you did this incredible thing.
Yes.
That's amazing.
I'm excited.
I think it's incredible. Sorry about that. My mic is going to haywire because I'm just like, I'm everywhere. I think that's awesome.
Yes.
I want to go something about CPS and CPS workers right after. Let's talk to Michelle. Michelle, are you there? We got to call her Michelle. I always know that name because my sister is named Michelle. Oh, Michelle, please call back. I didn't mean to put you on hold that long. There was a Michelle that called in, and she was very gracious. She held on, so I apologize for that. Let's go back to this for a second.
Yeah.
The workers, I guess it's CPS.
Yeah. So it's DFPS, is the Department of Family Protective Services, which is the mother, and then CPS is who does the actual investigation. And it's very interesting because in the CPS is Child Protective Services. And Gilbert, I want you to just go through this with me.
Okay.
CPS is the only agency that is allowed to come to your home and question you about potential criminal activity without Mirandaizing you.
No kidding.
Think about it. If a police officer cannot ask you questions about a potential crime or anything that happened, right? Why would somebody else who doesn't have the same accountability restrictions as police officers do be able to come to your house and ask you questions about your kid?
It's very interesting. Right? I guess the answer is I don't know, but here's the thing. I guess they would say because they don't have arresting authority. Is that
they do not?
But maybe
they would still need police.
But the key is anything they hear can be evidence.
No.
Or is admissible evidence or no?
No, hearsay is, remember,
That's
we're governed by code. So you can't do hearsay, which is very interesting to me, that anybody can make a phone call on anybody to report abuse. But then when you go back to those hearsay laws, then it's like, how can this be applicable in court? So you need hardcore standard evidence. So now everybody's turning themselves into mandatory reporters, right? So your teachers are mandatory reporters, your police officers are mandatory reporters. If you're a pastor and you're overseer of the church, you become a mandatory reporter, things to that nature.
Hold that thought. Michelle, are you back?
Yes, I'm here, Gilbert.
Michelle, I am so sorry that I had you too long, but I'm glad you're back. You're here with me, Gilbert Garcia, Tip from Gilbert, Talk Inspiration and Prayer, with Dr. Nissi Hamilton, who's really been sharing a lot of incredible stuff. What do you got for us?
Yes, absolutely. I heard the woman of God. Yes, I thank her so much for her transparency as well as her openness. And I just wanted to kind of make a comment a little bit about the prostitution and things. I kind of drive around a little bit in the area, and I see oftentimes beautiful women that are all hanging out on the side of, motels, flagging down, in an attempt to kind of sell their bodies and things. And I kind of stop and I kind of give them a word, from the Lord, and tell them, that they don't have to live like that. There's a better way. And then also, by me being a former working in the education field, I worked at a middle school, and I saw a lot of my students, my kids that I worked with, how their parents were in prostitution, and how it affects them so mentally, emotionally. And some of them would come, they would come to school class, and they are angry, and they are bitter about, the things that are going on, because they have to live with their parents. And again, I just want to applaud you for the work that you're doing, and how you are working with our kids. It is so imperative, because I know they used to saying a lot that they're our future. No, they are not our future. They are our present right now.
Amen.
And if we hold to them right now, there will be no future. So I thank you again so much for what you're doing. And my name is Michelle Stearns. And if there's anything that I could possibly do to help assist you in navigating and pursuing the efforts that you have for our kids, please feel free to give me a call. I certainly would love to do everything that's within my humanly power to help you.
Well, Michelle, you're an angel. Isn't that an angel?
Oh my God.
God, what a wonderful thing.
She made me cry too.
I know. Michelle, that is so amazing. And I just appreciate your willingness. I think it was Alejandro who earlier just talked about what can everyday people do. Well, you just heard it from Michelle.
Yeah.
Go out and just tell people there's a better way. There's a better way.
There is a better way, for sure. And one of the things, like I mentioned, some laws that I was able to pass. Right now in the state of Texas, you cannot work at a sexually oriented business at the age 18, 19, or 20. You got to be 21 years old.
Oh, that's great.
And because of what happened to me during my sex trafficking experience, we got that passed. So I'm very happy about that.
Congratulations.
And we call all those laws together the Texas Smart Act. So shout out to my advocate and just leader Jennifer Holman for helping me to write those bills and participate in that entire process and things like that. So and to Senator what is her name? I see her face. She's amazing. Oh my goodness, I see her face.
It'll come back to you.
Joan Huffman.
Joan Huffman.
Yeah.
Was she pushing this?
Oh man, she did. She was the reason why, I was there. She was the reason. She made sure that my voice was heard. I mean, and it was a lot of other people, including Governor Greg Abbott. Shout out to you, Governor, for making this happen and making sure that there was a Black girl behind a piece of legislation.
Amen.
Because Black girls need to feel that fierceness. They need to know that, hey, that we're being represented in this.
And sex trafficking is not a Democratic issue.
It's not.
It's not a Republican issue. It's a human rights issue. Michelle, thank you for calling in. And I sure hope you call in again, because you added a lot to the show today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, madam. We have another caller. Is there a Mark on the line?
Hello, Mark. Mark? One moment.
Go ahead, Mark. You got me, Gilbert Garcia, Talk Inspiration and Prayer with Dr. Nissi Hamilton. Mark, are you there?
Good morning.
Good morning, Mark.
How are you doing? Y'all doing all right this morning?
We're doing all right. We're doing better now that you called in. Tell us what you got.
Yeah.
Tell us what you got.
I'm listening to the young lady, and I think that what she's doing is very positive for what happened with this sex trafficking. And I'm encouraging that is any way possible that, like in our communities, the poor communities, Black communities, it doesn't really matter. We got to save these young youth, these young girls from these situations of what that. And then one of the callers just called. She said, well, she walked up to some of the young ladies, and they was look like 18 or 19 years of old out there prostituting. And I just want to say this, that is a crime that is what's being committed out there. And I hate to say that, but when it comes to African American men, we get the downfall on it, because we talked about how they're out soliciting themselves, and they're grown women, but then again, the Black male is the one who gets charged for the soliciting of the prostitute. It should be both issues should be charged with that. But I think we need to start with the young youth, these young ladies, and these are what we really need to help them, to not let them lead to go down that road. And I hope that we can somehow get something in our communities to try and stop this here madness. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I'm just trying to say, because it hurts a lot of family, and mostly at the end of the day, a lot of African American Black men will be charged with crimes that they're out doing what they're doing, but the woman is doing the same thing too. It's a double sword when it comes to us. So I'm just hoping that we can find some way to just stop them from getting to that position in that age, because once they get up to a certain age, I know that's a felony or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
That's my opinion on
Well,
that.
so,
Mark, thank
yeah.
you for calling. Stay with us though, Mark. Go ahead.
Mark, I just want to put it out there that while it may appear that it's only black men that are pushing this agenda, if you look at the news, there are more white men that have been arrested and charged for human trafficking, and being a part of this network. We Fort Bend had a huge operation, Operation Boo. We had a huge another operation in Harris County. We have operations that are done that are public information that we put out in the news as fast as we can when it comes out. And if you look at the men that are being arrested and charged, I mean, they're white and black.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. What I was saying, remember that little sting operation they had over there off of Hillcroft, and the women were 21, 25, 30, whatever the age, were out soliciting themselves, and then the men were riding around. I guess the men was trying to pick up the women. The women were doing wrong just as well as the men were doing wrong, and those men was being arrested for those type of crimes, but the women were not being charged with it. So what I'm just saying is that if we can stop these women and get these women in our communities and stop them at an early age, they don't have to do it. Like you said, there are jobs and stuff like that we can get them into, because what I'm saying, it messes up a lot of homes. It breaks up a lot of things like that when it comes. But at the end of the day, I think it was just unfair to see a man. It didn't matter if he was white or black, but the woman was doing just as wrong as what he was doing. You see what I'm saying?
Right. And I hear your heart. And it is so hard to have this conversation because I know everybody has their perspective from different angles just because of the things that we see. But I just want to be clear. Human trafficking is not a white or black issue.
That's correct.
It is a human rights issue. It is a social impediment that is affecting the world wealth system. And this is the reason why Gilbert has me here. He manages, money on a whole nother level. And so when you get into this type of disruptive behavior, you have people who want to make money in a, progressive untaxed income. And, the money that the man has, that income's been taxed. But once it makes it to her hands or his hands, who's selling their bodies, which is illegal because you cannot turn yourself into a slave, right? And that you can't tax that income. You cannot turn your body into a job, and you don't want to turn your body parts into a job. You don't want to say, "Oh, my boobs are working for me," or anything below my belly button is working for me. You don't want your body parts to go to work for you in that manner, and you definitely don't want the government saying, "Hey, well, since your boobs are working for you or anything below your belly button is working for you, then we ought to be able to put a tax on it." That is slavery.
Yeah.
And this is why human trafficking is slavery. I think that's the most clearest example.
And then because you have, I don't know if I could say this, with the pimp in the background. Yeah. And the pimp is like, he's beholden to the pimp.
Right.
And there's violence and they can't break away.
You can't.
It takes courage. Mark, I hope you call it again, my friend. And I don't mean to cut you short. I have one more caller I want to get in before the end of the show. But Mark, you're a gem. This is the type of dialogue we need.
Yeah.
And Mark, you come in and saying what you're saying is a perspective. And I just appreciate you for calling in. And I hope you call in some more, my friend. Oh, I may have lost Mark. Well, Mark, thank you for calling in.
Thank you, Mark.
We have one more call. I want to try to get it in here before the end of the show. Did Dr. Kathy leave? Dr. Kathy left. Well, you know what? There was an old show called Carol Burnett.
Okay, I think I'm familiar with that.
And she would have the song at the end, "I'm so glad we had this time together." And she'd say, and before you know it, comes the time we have to say so long. 1 hour's over.
Oh my God!
1 hour's over.
I didn't even get into all of my story.
Is that Dr. Kathy?
Dr. Kathy, yes.
Dr. Kathy, real quick. I want to get this
Kathy
in.
Tatum.
I know, Dr. Kathy, you there?
Yeah.
Dr. Kathy.
She's there.
Dr. Kathy, please, come on in, Dr. Kathy.
Okay, so thank you for this topic, Gilbert. That's my sister right next to you, Dr. Nissi. Okay, so I'm calling in. I'm going, look, sis, I'm always going to give you your flowers. What people see on Facebook is not even the iceberg of what us advocates that been through it, that fight
Right.
for it. And I've been by your side even when you was doing District D,
Right.
and making your nonprofit and making sure everybody gets food. People got to understand that's what they see on Facebook, but they don't see the tears. They don't see where we're sitting there and me and you looking at each other, texting each other, going, okay, we got 20 women in the hotel. How are we going to move them to apartments?
Right.
So I'm giving you your flowers because people don't understand even when you go through stuff and you are walking in Christ and you're trying to save other people, we have to go through this every time we save a victim. We're like, oh my God, we're trying to make her a survivor.
Yes.
But that people think just because you rescue them, they're not a survivor yet. There's all these other steps we have to do.
That
and all
part.
these people are funding all these other agencies, and people like me and you are sitting there going, oh, we need a place for them to go. We need for them to be able to understand. And what I want to understand, like the other caller that just called in, the woman out there, there's so much other stuff that's not discussed.
Right.
Why she does not need to be also arrested, because that child probably might got raped over and over and over.
Yes.
And then she's going to be beaten up. And that person is threatened over and over that if she left that corner, that her whole family is going to be killed. So we don't understand that there's a whole story behind a streetwalker. There's another story behind that person.
Bring it
Even
on.
though she wants to be rescued, somebody has to still handle that pimp. And if we don't handle that pimp, he's not always somebody sitting in a car. He might be the pastor of the church. He might be the politician. He might be the person that bails her out. So we got to understand people like Dr. Nissi is sitting there going, I'm going to continue to tell my story. I'm going to continue to go in there and feed them. I'm going to continue to give them hygiene products. And I'm going to continue to tell my story in a way that saves them. Go ahead,
Dr. Kathy, you stay here because we're rolling off of radio. So no, stay with me. Stay tuned. We'll see you next time. I'm cutting short. Gilbert Andrew Garcia, we'll see you next time. We're now rolling into social media, Dr. Kathy. So we're going to stay on another 5 minutes here. The radio I can't control. The social media I can. I love it. And so you're going to be looking now into that camera. Mm-hmm. And I didn't mean to, Dr. Kathy, to cut you off. Keep going, lady. You are preaching and you are saying it. And bring it on.
My sentiments exactly, Kathy. Real quick. My sentiments exactly. And another thing is to Mr. Mark. I think his name was Kathy. You brought up a great point. A lot of times people don't understand the amount of work that HPD is doing to minimize the network of the buyers, right? Trying to get all the buyers together and figure out who are the actual buyers, who are the people that are going out there and developing the relationship with them. Shout out to my good friend and one of my mentors, Joe Madison, who has demand disruption, and being able to get in front of that buyer before they turn what they're doing into a network, because trial and error is something serious. Mm-hmm. Gilbert, I'm serious, because the root word of trial is to try. Mm-hmm. And they're going to continue to try until somebody gives them the okay.
Yep.
Right. You know what I mean? That's and we're not talking about the police. We're talking about these girls. You know what I mean? And a lot of those girls oftentimes are in cahoots with the law enforcement so that they can get law enforcement to know who their regulars are. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. And this lifestyle isn't the romantic pretty woman.
It's not.
I mean, people have this romanticism of pretty woman, and Prince Charming is just going to take you away and you're going to buy all this fancy clothes on Uptown Boulevard. No. This is the deepest, darkest bowels of society. Right. And those young women and men are threatened. They're beaten. They're deprived of basics. It's awful.
It is.
It's awful. It's awful. And it starts off with I rescued another young lady that just moved in her house, and unfortunately the story started just like that, Gilbert. She went with him because he promised a house. He promised to take care of his kids, and all of a sudden they did go to a house, but she was trapped.
And once you're in, you're trapped. That's a good word. Once you're in, you're stuck.
Right. And being trapped looks different for a lot of different people, right? Because if you go through the tenure of my human trafficking story, it started with labor trafficking. It started with me, being sued. I was sued by the state of Texas at 15 years old for being homeless with a kid. I was 15. I was barely out of foster care.
Holy
I
cow.
was actually considered, what is it, Kathy? I was aged out. I was considered aged out of foster care at that particular time. And
there you are with a child, and you don't even know up from down. They're like, you're aged out. You're on your own now, kid.
Right. And I'm the mother, but I'm considered the perpetrator, even though I'm trying to protect my kid. And my kid is considered the victim because they're with me and I'm homeless.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's the trap.
And that is the trap.
That's the trap.
I mean, well, part two to that trap is you go to court, you're standing before the judge, and then the judge starts treating you like the system, as if you can defend yourself. So you have no attorney, you have no representation, you need an ad litem for yourself. Your kid gets an attorney, but you don't get an attorney. And now you're a part of the same system that you thought was put there to protect you and meant to preserve you as a citizen.
Yep.
They're sitting up here demoralizing and demonizing you as a mother. And it's like, I can't protect if I'm homeless. Yeah. I need help.
And then you're going to fall back into the lifestyle.
Well,
or something.
And that's how I got into the lifestyle.
Yeah. And what you just brought up is Zach's example of when people try to pinpoint one issue on trying to solve something. So even like the homelessness, people like, oh, let's go get homeless. Then the judge, and then you needed a lawyer, and then you would look at depression, and they're making me feel like I'm not a good enough mother. So when people try to piss prove one thing, it's a group effort, and that's why we go out and we collaborate with so many nonprofits, because that judge needs to know what you went through so she don't make the same mistake. Or we need new judges because they've been sitting there 20, 30 years and don't want to change their mind because they really didn't get to hear how, what people go through, and that their decision could affect somebody else.
Amen.
That's so true.
Well, Dr. Kathy, I appreciate you calling in. Please call in again. We're going to roll off here.
Love you, Nissi.
I love you too,
and we so appreciate you for all that you do.
Thank you.
Dr. Nissi, I'm going to let you look in that camera, and I want you to say whatever you'd like to say for the few moments. But no matter what you say, please put in your website. Okay. How do we reach you? Someone who wants to be part of this program, a school that wants to be part of the program, someone wants to donate. I know you don't toot your horn like that, but I want you to right now. You say whatever you want to say, but please do that, because people need to know there's a way they can help you to help society. So please, you got it.
You guys can always Google me, Nissi, Nissi, Hamilton. You can email me, Nissi, Nissi.hamilton@yahoo.com. My website is www.nissis, that's NISSIS network, inc.com, and you can see the program build out on there, which we're still building out. And so shout out to Principal Everett Hare at Worthing High School for allowing me to pilot this program with Grow with Google and the Digital Workforce Academy. And we are, I'm a Black girl that's in tech, and this is tech against trafficking. And this is my first time doing it on this level. I'm very excited. And one of the things that made me not want to continue to be in a trafficking scenario and really just kind of empower me is, Gilbert, we are born looking like our mothers and our fathers, but we die looking like our decisions and our consequences.
Amen.
And so I wanted to respect the way I died. I wanted my children to know that it was important that they knew who their mother was, because my mother didn't get that opportunity.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, let me say this to Houston. This is Gilbert Andrew Garcia of A Tip from Gilbert. You're looking at the website of Dr. Hamilton there online here as we're streaming. Dr. Hamilton, you are an angel. I mean it. Because think of the lives you're impacting. Think of the men, I don't know the right word, the Johns, that you're making them see the light to, hey, you know what? This is not a good thing. Think of the women that are there, and you're saying to them, you know what? There's a better way.
Right.
You're not being real preachy. You're just really trying to be real.
Right.
Real.
Right.
And think of all these other young kids you're helping. And I mean, what an amazing story. I'm so glad to know you. I'm so glad you're on the show. And I hope you don't mind when I bring you back again.
I'm coming back.
Because an hour went like this, Houston. And that's how you know that she brought it. She brought it. So this is Gilbert Andrew Garcia of A Tip from Gilbert saying, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Gilbert Andrew Garcia. Listen to my radio show, A Tip from Gilbert. Talk, inspiration, and prayer every Monday from 11 a.m. till noon on Houston's gospel leader, KWWJ. 1360 AM and streaming live on kwwj.org. Listen on the legendary KYOK 1140 AM and streaming live on kyokradio.org. KCOH 1230 AM, The Source. On Send Geek Radio 95.1 FM 1460 AM. And Aliento Radio 101.7 FM and 1540 AM. Call in at 832-570-8075 and follow me on social media. See you then.